For example, usage of facilities. Obviously, our community schools are used a great deal by community organizations for activities, and we have some that are on the docket for later in September. The decision on those items may impact what we do with those pieces. As far as the other items, I don't think those are as going to generate as much conversation. And is that your sense as well? Those are really the two primary issues?
I think what's most important to note is that component that Dan is mentioning is 5 days a week. That's the component that doesn't seem to, we all can agree on that.
And I think that's the other piece that, when we talked last Tuesday, I believe it was really clear, and we put it in the documentation that I provided to you. The primary objective is, while recognizing and being cognizant of the physical, mental, and social health of our students, staff, and community, that we need to have students and staff in school, in person, 5 days a week. So everything that's in this plan is about that, and of course, the last two pieces are the pieces that you're about to embark in your discussion on. Mr. Horn asked about the survey results. I would be happy to share those if it would be okay with you folks.
That'd be great.
This was a survey that was done, submitted last Friday. It had 3 questions. One was you're responding as either a parent or guardian, as a faculty or staff member, or a parent, guardian, or faculty and staff member, or both. One question was based upon masking, and there were really 4 options that the board talked about in the workshop last week. One was an option based upon parent or staff choice, which I think is what many of you are advocating for here this evening. Another one was to follow the CDC guidelines, and that would be following them, whatever is in place. Another one was to start the year by following the CDC guidelines with a plan to reduce mask usage based upon certain health data and health metrics, and that's what Dr. McGregor was talking about earlier. And the fourth one was masks in high traffic areas and optional in other areas, and I don't remember which one of the parents mentioned it, about the Beach Hill School.
Daisy.
Daisy, okay. That they are planning on looking at something like that. I was not aware of that, but it's based on that model. The other question was on pool testing, and it was simple. If it was offered as a consent-based, permission and consent-based, would you opt in, opt out, or would you need more information to make a decision? So, with the numbers that have come in, there were a total of 919 responses. So 79% of those responded as parents or guardians, 16.7% as faculty or staff, and 4.3% were both. On the masking piece, for optional based upon parent or staff choice, it was 54.8%. For following the CDC guidelines, it was 19.6%. Following the guidelines with a plan to reduce based upon health data metrics, 13.5%. And the mixed model or the hybrid model, masks in the high traffic areas and optional other areas, was 12.2%. For pooled testing, 23.5% would opt in to a consent-based program, 40.5% would opt out, and 36% would need more information to make a decision for either themselves as a staff member or for their children. So really a nice response in a very short period of time. The survey was put up on Friday. It closed at noontime yesterday. So just express on behalf of the board appreciation for all the people that took the time to do the survey, and also would be remiss without saying appreciation to all of you who have come tonight with your public comments, and to all the people who sent emails and messages. As Beth said, everybody received a lot of them, and every single one of them has been read. So I think it's appreciated.
How many questionnaires were sent out?
How many were sent out?
Yeah.
It was put out as a link, so whoever got the link, and frankly, if somebody wanted to pass the link on to someone else, they could. So
900 seems low.
That's also assuming, like, I have 3 kids in the school, so,
Right. I mean,
right.
if you look at an accurate number of parents in our school, that's actually a pretty close number of actual parents for the school because of how many families we have multiples. It is pretty, that's actually a really good return number.
And it was set out through the emergency notification system, so everybody that's got their information in there would have gotten the link. So.
Right, and I didn't
I hope
have,
that answers your question, Joel.
right, and I didn't have anybody message me saying they didn't get the link, and I did put something out there like to make sure. I didn't have one person say, I didn't get it, so
Yes.
we're hoping. We're hopeful.
So, but it's good data, it's more information for the board to have as they work through this discussion. So I think the tasks at hand are the plan that's here, and with the information that you've received, and, you know, with the goal that's stated, and again, I'm hearing it from parents and so are you, in-school, in-person instruction is critical. And you know, I think, at least for me, the goal needs to be, what can we do to maximize that so that we don't end up in situations where we have a hybrid model or have to go back to a fully remote model. And again, just so people who weren't at the workshop, the plan has in it, we have to have an option or a way to make that work if we have to do that. The intent is not to go to hybrid and not to go to remote unless we're absolutely forced to because of conditions. So please know that up front.
Can I suggest something?
Sure.
So I see this as, this isn't a one-size-fits-all vote. I feel like we should separate this vote out into a vote for staff, a vote for 12 plus, and a vote for under 12. But I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
I concur.
I almost wonder if in that, this is just me, I know I heard Dr. McGregor saying that children 10 and over can transmit the virus, but 12 and up is where the vaccination rate is, but 10 and under don't, or under 10, they don't tend to transmit, so I wonder if there's a different breakdown we should do because of the very low.
So just to clarify what you meant,
Okay.
is the rate of transmission.
Okay.
So it's not like they cannot
Right, they just
transmit.
don't as much.
Yeah, it's just the viral load in a kid, it's because their lungs is.
May I ask, Abby, can you just give me again what you were recommending as the
Sorry.
breakdown? No, I just want to be able to.
Under 12, 12 plus, and staff.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
what does Paul think? We haven't heard from him.
I'm willing to entertain that conversation. Yes.
I think so, makes sense.
Is that specifically on masking, or is that on testing as well?
I was thinking masking.
Masking, okay.
masking.
Just want to make sure.
You mean, it could be.
Just trying to make sure.
There's somebody with us. She had her hand up.
Just wanted to see if I could ask a question, if I can, that's fine.
Sure.
Where you're suggesting doing the tiered discussion, is that kind of why we did the survey the way it was done, so that you didn't have to have that discussion in that manner? To talk about what you're doing for the back-to-school plan with masking and, you know, because it wasn't broken out versus the young kids, the high school kids, and, you know, there was a teacher component.
No, we haven't discussed this until right this second.
Right, because we can't discuss it ahead of time, so it just,
Casey, the intent of the survey was to get a flavor from the community on, here are some options for masking that the board discussed. What are your feelings? And we wanted to know, are you a parent, are you a staff member, or are you both? It wasn't with any specific goals in mind.
Honestly, Casey, I was really hoping the survey data would come back with like 90% want this and 10% want this, so our decision wasn't so difficult.
Continuing on that, I think let's start with staff, might be the easiest option. So we just give our opinions now?
Go for it.
Right. So I think staff being adults. Sorry.
Okay.
Siri wants to weigh in too, please.
Yeah. I think staff are adults, and adults have an option to vaccinate. So to me, I think staff, I think it should be an option, such choice. For vaccinated people, they can get vaccinations, and so it's choice for staff, for me, as far as concerned.
I would agree with that, Munir. be honest.
I'm also very inclined to say that because we have such a high vaccination rate,
For staff.
well, just
Staff and-
like in this town and our surrounding towns, because we have to consider our staff comes from other places other than Ellsworth. But Maine is holding a very high vaccination rate statewide, but also when you look at our town and surrounding towns, it's extremely high, extremely high. So I think we take that in consideration, like I feel like that rate of transmission is so low, the chances, because we have that vaccine rate up here.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
So for me, yes, I agree with the staff. And for 12 and up, I would also recommend something along a hybrid model. Masking in the hallways, when kids are with lots of other kids, but when they are sitting at their desk, socially distant, I would be okay with them taking their masks off as long as numbers remain low. And if numbers start to go up,
That
I
would,
think we would have to go to full mask.
and it would include masks being off at recess, correct? Because
Yes.
last year we had to mask at recess most of the time too, so that would include that recess time frame as well. So
Yeah.
it would really be passing in the hallways when you're switching classes.
What's your take on this?
Well, a month ago, I was, like a lot of people, feeling pretty hopeful about where this direction of this virus was going. It seemed to be getting under control. The vaccination rate was steadily ratcheting up. We were doing a good job here in Maine and some other states, and states that didn't have such high vaccination rates were not doing that well, but I felt good about here. I was enjoying not wearing a mask.
And here you
Uh,
are.
I'm wearing a mask. I started wearing a mask recently. I'll go into that in a minute. But two things have happened since, around a month ago. One is that the Delta variant has really made a strong showing of force, and it's causing spikes all over the world and all over this country. And that worries me. We don't know enough about it yet, I don't think. I like Dr. McGregor's suggestion that we begin the year with universal masking. I like it because he's a pediatrician, and we heard his credentials tonight. The rest of his pediatric team, he sent us a letter outlining his recommendations earlier this week, or last week, and the rest of his pediatric team at East Northern Light here in Ellsworth co-signed that letter. It's also what the American Academy of Pediatricians recommends, and the CDC. And I respect, all these scientists, and virologists like my colleague over here. But, the pediatricians are focused, the epidemiologists are focused on the virus and how to stop it. And pediatricians are focused on the whole health of the child. So when I hear a pediatrician say, yeah, masking is what we recommend at this point, I feel like I have to pay attention to that. There was some criticism of, the CDC and the epidemiologists for last year for not considering the whole health of children when they recommended some guidance that ended up with remote learning, which was, I think we all agree, was a hardship on our children. So anyway, that's where I'm leaning right now. The other thing, and this is my personal experience, I got vaccinated as soon as I could back in March. Got both doses of the Moderna, so did my wife. And I felt, okay, I'm protected now. This is it. Well, not too long ago, we have two businesses in town, and 3 of our employees at one of the businesses contracted. They had symptoms, and they went and got tested, and they were positive for COVID, and they had all been fully vaccinated. And then a few days later, my wife who had been in obviously close contact with them also contracted COVID, also was fully vaccinated. Now, they all have relatively mild symptoms and are on, the upswing and recovering. Even before she got her positive result, she and I had been, she was quarantined in our house, and I was staying separate from her. And since then, I've continued to not have any symptoms, and I've gotten tested and tested negative. But I started wearing a face mask. And I checked with Dan early today about whether it was advisable for me to attend this meeting. But according to our policy, our standard operating procedure here in this district, that if you're fully vaccinated and showing no symptoms, if you've been in close contact, you're not required to quarantine. So that's why I'm here. But the reason I'm mentioning this to the public, and I talked to my wife about sharing this information. Obviously, it's personal, and she asked me to do it because she wants the public, our community, to know that even if you're vaccinated, these are called breakthrough infections. COVID can break through the vaccine. It's rare. It doesn't happen very often, and when it does, people tend to have milder cases. But it makes me consider, well, shouldn't we have another layer of protection in addition to the vaccine? I understand, and I appreciate, and I feel compassion for the views that were expressed here tonight. I really do. My overriding concern is that we get back into school full-time, 5 days a week, in person. I think the emotional damage to our children is, there's more of it caused by being hybrid or remote than by wearing a mask. I think our kids can mostly deal with wearing a mask. I understand about seeing your friends' faces, but we're going to have opportunities for that to happen in our schools. We're not going to I don't think if we did require masks indoors, it wouldn't be requiring it outdoors, and they're going to have recess time. And I think, like Dr. McGregor said, if we start the year trying this out, look at what's happening down south in the schools that have already gone back. And we have an actual experiment going on right now, a control group, communities and schools that are doing it with masks and communities and schools that are doing it without masks. And we're going to have some data pretty soon on how that works. So I know this opinion that I'm expressing right now is not popular with everyone, and certainly with many of the people in this room. I'm aware of that. I acknowledge that. And it's hard for me to say this because I am really moved by the stories and the expressions that I've heard tonight, and by the stories that I've heard in the emails that we've received. And like Beth said, I've read every single one of them. I haven't been able to respond to everyone, but I think whatever decision we make tonight, it's not going to be the final one. We're going to have to return to this topic again and again as conditions change, and conditions will change. Hopefully they'll change for the better. That's my hope. And if we did decide to begin the year with a mask mandate, my hope would be that we could, before too long, start to ratchet it down and find opportunities to not require masks in certain situations and certain circumstances. And like, for instance, the idea that was voiced earlier that kids wear a mask as they enter the building in the hallway, but once they are seated in the classroom, they can take it off. I would like to get to that, and then I'd eventually like to get to where we can just not wear masks at all. But I think we need to be cautious. And the other thing I want to say is that the thing that moved me the most from the messages that I've received from people who are against a mask mandate is when they describe the difficulty that some children have because of sensory issues or emotional, there are students who can put on a mask and it's not an issue. And we've heard tonight, in this room and several of the emails we've gotten describe kids who just have such a hard time with it. And I think we need to make accommodations for those things. I heard an interview with a school superintendent in Florida on NPR this afternoon who said that, yes, we're going to make, and her district was going to require masks, but she said that we're going to make accommodations for people, for kids who have a demonstrated need, for whom it's not, it's harmful for them to wear them. So I think we can, this is not, we don't have to invent this wheel. It's already, there's districts all over the state and country that are working on it. I see Dan nodding. So I don't want to come across as saying, I don't care about those kids, because I do very much, and I want to see those kids receive an accommodation. But that's where I am.
Can I just add a couple of
Yeah.
things? And you brought up a couple of things in your comments, as did other members, but with regard to the accommodations for students that have the sensory issues, if you recall, last year, masks were not left to local school department decision-making. It was a requirement, including students that had special needs or had sensory issues. We were not permitted to make those changes. I think the fact that it is a recommendation right now opens the door to being able to do that in certain circumstances. And I know that's on the radar of our special education department. So I would agree with Paul that that's something that can be looked at and needs to be looked at. A couple of other things. You mentioned the standard operating procedure, and that's the reason that you're here. That operating procedure is not just for schools, but in society right now, if you are fully vaccinated and asymptomatic and you're a close contact, you're not required to quarantine. But that's something to bring up for you folks as a board, and I don't know how many of you folks here in the audience saw it earlier today. One of the things that's happening in Augusta with the CDC, there is a US CDC set of guidelines that are recommendations, and they don't automatically become guidelines that Maine adopts. The Maine CDC has to make a decision on that. We've been told a couple of things. One is that the standard operating procedure is going to be updated. We were hearing it was going to be at least this Friday before we received it. Well, we're making plans for tonight, and lo and behold, it was sent out this afternoon. So a couple of things that are part of that standard operating procedure now, I think you might want to at least have for information for your conversation, is that with vaccines, and this goes back to what Trevor was saying, fully vaccinated people who are asymptomatic do not have to quarantine when exposed to a positive COVID case. Plain and simple. That is student or staff. So any student or staff member in that situation would not have to quarantine. There are other issues around that, like how do you determine who's vaccinated or not, but we can talk about that. The pooled testing piece, and this is directly from what we got from the commissioner today, any student or staff member who participates in weekly pooled testing is also exempt from quarantine if exposed to COVID-19 at school and is asymptomatic. Another piece, and this is not taking one side or the other, this is just for your information. If you have a universal indoor mask policy, asymptomatic students who attend school while wearing masks indoors, when it's consistently enforced and who were 3 feet away from the individual who tested positive with no physical contact in a classroom, do not have to quarantine for the regular school day. So that's something that the state has now adopted here in Maine as part of their standard operating procedures. So that's just more information for you folks to have. And Abby, you mentioned vaccination rates. Just to add another piece, we are required now to report our vaccination rates for students and staff every month. So we're going to be able to track those percentages.
That's great. Interesting.
What else?
We can't use personally identifiable information. So when we start asking our staff members to let us know, it's going to be through a confidential piece, and we report the numbers. So we're not going to be asking people specifically if they're vaccinated. To me, the only time we do that is if we have a positive case and someone's a close contact and they say, well, I'm vaccinated. Well, we're going to say, show us your card, and then you don't have to quarantine. But anyway.
Yeah. So, this whole COVID being positive and negative, I think one of the things that makes me have into making a decision is, I'll give a personal example. I'm PPD positive. What does that mean? It means I have TB, right? So if you just look at positive cases and negative cases, and I don't have TB, I can speak, I can sing right now, right? Not right now. But so we have to be very careful with asymptomatic cases too. We have to take that into consideration, right? You're positive for COVID, that doesn't mean you're getting sick, it doesn't mean you're getting hospitalized, right? So this is why I feel comfortable saying that anybody above 12 who is the option of getting vaccinated, it should be optional if you want to wear a mask or not. For kids who don't have an option, it's under 12, they need to be masked. But what happened, I have a young kid who cannot be vaccinated. He did tell me that they have mask breaks in school. So the information you're getting that you're wearing mask all day is wrong. Please check with your kid. There is mask breaks, am I correct?
There are,
No.
No?
No, he passed out, running around in those masks.
Are there no mask breaks?
It's
Yes?
just different for every
We need to
teacher.
find out.
It depended on the teacher's mood, basically.
Yeah.
How they personally felt about having mask breaks or not. There were some teachers who would just say, take off your mask while sitting at your desk. And there were some teachers who didn't think they were safe at all. So it really just, and that's like my
Thank you,
personal
Rena.
middle school.
Thank you, that's important, because I think there needs to be a standardized mask breaks.
and I'm looking at our administrators who are shaking their heads. There were supposed to be mask breaks. I can tell you that this year, moving forward, if there is a mask piece, my understanding is there are required to be mask breaks. That came directly from the commissioner's office. So I'm just telling you what I'm getting today. That there have to be, the other piece is, students still have to eat lunch. You know, one of the pieces that we're not talking about tonight, and I think the point's been made very clearly, there is still a recommendation for spacing. It's not 6 feet, there's still a recommendation for 3 feet, but it's very clear. The 3-foot spacing is not intended to be a barrier to getting all students and staff back in school. So they want you to consider other layered mitigation pieces, like we're talking about pool testing. But if the best that you can do is 2 feet, for example, in the lunchrooms, the best that you can do is 2 feet, and that's what we're being told to do. So there are going to be opportunities in the school, even if you decide to put a mask requirement to start the year, where kids are going to need to have mask breaks. Okay, when they have recess, right now, there is no recommendation for outdoor masking. There's a mask break there. Lunchtime, even though I think in all the schools, we can accommodate our students in their lunchrooms, when weather is good, we still have the picnic tables, we still have the capacity for kids to eat outside. So you're right, Manir, there will be options and opportunities for masks to come off.
Okay.
I think Mr. Casey wanted something.
I just wanted to state that vaccination status is not a protected information, and so you can legally ask your employees if they're vaccinated or not. That's not protected by HIPAA or any other vendors.
Thank you. So I have a different take on all of this because I am this person who is hard of hearing, and I need to see your faces to kind of get what you're saying. And it's not just a face, your lips. It is kind of like I have to be able to see what your face is doing to add content to the pieces that I pick up. And I will tell you, this masking has been torture to me. And I think to myself all the time, I'm a full-grown adult. I should be able to handle this. And I do think, oh my gosh, the kids who have to deal with this is so hard. And I'm the person who made the masks. I'm the person who designed them and pushed them out and got them out to people for free. And even for as much as the sewing I did and trying to make them for each different size, for each different child and type of face, no matter what I did, the mask still rubbed my child's face. She has a scar now right here. That is what happened from being every day. And I just feel like we have got to, we are not a COVID hotspot. We have never been a COVID hotspot. I think we need to come to some type of middle ground, some type of solution in which we can keep the kids safe and not have masks on all the time, because especially with the younger ones learning phonics in school, you do need to see the way the mouth is moving. You need to see, what they're doing. Even when interacting with other students, even with interacting with other people, part of me not hearing well and not being able to see people's faces, this is a bit embarrassing, but I can't tell you how many times I've been like, is that person screwing with me? Like, did I hear that right? Are they being insulting? Is that like, because sarcasm registers very different when you have a mask on your face and when you can't hear someone real well. It is complicated. And I had put a thing out there saying, please contact me, let me know what your thoughts and feelings. We had too many kids not attend last year because their child could not wear a mask all day. And now those kids are further behind than ever. We need those kids back. And I think I would be more on board with Dr. McGregor's idea if we were starting the year in the middle of winter. But I just got off a plane from the south and had to wear, despite being vaccinated, I had to wear a mask for that entire time. And when it is hot like that and you've got that mask on, just like we had at the very last couple of weeks of the year, you can't think, you can't learn, you're just like, get this off of me. And I think what I would like to see is, because of the heat, I would like to see the first 2 weeks of us coming back to school to be optional and see where our numbers at. And we talked about, okay, other places around the country are going back. Well, as a matter of fact, I have friends in Yuma, Arizona. Their kids went back sooner than anybody. They went back in July. Don't ask me why. But I was just looking on their website, and they have hardly any rise in new cases. They have, as of August 11th, they had 16 new cases. They're still at one of the, not the very lowest, but they're still close to their lowest point. So you're right, there is a litmus test.
And that's 16 cases in the state, not 16 cases in the school,
Sorry.
correct?
Yeah, it's new cases, and it's for Yuma, Arizona, so that would be.
So it's not like there's 16 in the school, there's 16 everywhere.
Right, and it doesn't separate down to ages. But I just think that at this very moment, I do feel like, okay, it's a government standard. Our buses have to have people masks. We can't get around that. I don't think it's too much to ask to say, get off the bus and you get into your classroom. You sit down at your desk, and then at your desk, take the mask off for the 12 and under. And, well, actually for everybody, I think, personally, and see how those 2 weeks go. If our numbers keep going up in those 2 weeks, yeah, like we might have to pull the plug and say, we're going to have to mask up. That is a distinct possibility. I think kids need to have a mask on them at all times, because we do have certain types of fire drills and other things in which some of our drills involve putting the kids back on the bus and actually moving them to the high school. So kids are going to need to have a mask on them at all times in case we have to do something like that.
Or in a closet.
Or a closet. I mean, there's reasons in which they're going to have that mask on them anyway. But if we could start and just go those first 2 weeks and see how this goes, having masks on the buses, having masks in the hallways, and then taking the masks off, because our classes are only about 20 to 22 kids in a class. Most of those kids are going to be 3 feet apart. There's only going to be a few exceptions in which they're not. So we're still going to have mostly social distancing to a decent degree. And we're also talking about the people who are the largest unvaccinated group is under 12. Well, we know 10 and down are also the least likely to spread. So I just think that we have opportunity to roll with the punches as we go forward and look at this and change this. But I don't think where our numbers are right at this moment really say we should be masked all the time in school, all the people. But that's my opinion, just one person.
Abby, can I just clarify one
Yeah.
thing? When you mentioned the buses, and I think you said it earlier in your comments, and I want people to hear it here, buses, we do not have an option.
Right.
That is
It's
a
all public
requirement.
transportation
Right.
everywhere.
All public transportation, which includes all school transportation, and that's for
Right.
any school related, so.
And Uber. If you take an Uber, people
it's
should
like
know
a-
this,
it's like
because
a
this was a
cab.
thing.
It's like a cab. I do think that going forward, I think whatever is decided tonight, it's an ongoing, day by day, week by week kind of thing. And I do appreciate, like, I appreciate the, mask up the first 3 weeks and see what happens, but I also really appreciate the optional mask for 3 weeks and see what happens, so that we can kind of, because we're not gonna know until we take the masks off. And I know once it's there, it's more difficult to get rid of it, but we're not gonna know. Anyway.
See, as you are saying, we're thinking about the hybrid model for kids younger than 12.
I'm thinking for everybody, but,
Hybrid, no, I'm thinking that
But-
anybody above 12 that can get vaccinated, it's your option.
right.
You want to wear a tinfoil hat, go for it. Right? You want to wear a mask, you want to wear a respirator, not going to stop you. Because you have an option to get vaccinated, right?
Do you feel that way? Even so, hallways,
It's an option.
okay,
Right?
okay.
It's your option.
okay.
But I think I think we're in agreement in most of this, is that the children who are under 12 cannot get vaccinated, right? And so, again, we need to find a way to keep them protected, right? Yes, we are not the public health or whatever, but we have information. We keep them protected and we look at the data. If the data shows, and I sent trend data today to all of you.
Right.
I'm looking at that trend. If that trend keeps going up, we're coming back here and saying, I'm sorry, the trend has gone up, there's
Right.
more infections, people are in ICUs, let's protect the kids more. But until then,
Just for clarification, the hybrid that Munir is referring to is hybrid masking, not hybrid school. It
no,
would
no,
still
no,
be
right.
5 days a week, but hybrid masking.
Just masking.
Masking in the hallways and the high traffic
yeah,
areas.
please.
So here's a question. So what about those grade levels where some kids are 12 in the classroom and
I think
some
if
are
you're
not?
12 or 12. You're 12, you're 2 weeks, you're 1 month past 12, you're good. Or no, 6 weeks past 12.
I
Kids
just think
share
it
their
would,
birthdays.
I think it would be, I don't know, the thought of having some kids that have to wear masks in a classroom and some that don't.
Then
I think
the
it's the
option
reward
would
for
be to
getting-
have everybody in EEMS, kids masked, and then,
This lady right here would like to say something.
What is the difference between if you're 12 and up and have the option of getting vaccinated, you should have the option of wearing a mask? So some of them aren't vaccinated, and you can still get it and spread it being vaccinated, as opposed to the 10 and under that barely spread it anyway. So why would there be an option for them if half of them aren't even
okay.
vaccinated
It's the
anyway, as opposed
vaccine.
to?
Vaccine is 12 years and older. I'm
Right, but you
basing
can still spread it if you have the vaccine.
the viral load of,
I mean,
you know,
he knows 5
vaccinated.
people that got it and they're all vaccinated. I'm just saying, what is the difference between the 12 and up having the option because they have the option of being vaccinated,
Yes.
as opposed to 10 and under that barely spread it, not having an option?
Because 12 and, so when Dr. McGregor says they can still spread it, the chances, the viral load in a 10-year-old is less.
Right.
But this, you can still spread it as a kid. You can. I mean, there's
But
evidence for that.
You can still spread it being vaccinated, and there are 12 and up that aren't vaccinated, so you want to give the choice to anybody 12 and up to wear a mask. But less than 12 or less than 10 barely spread it anyway.
Yeah, so you have, there's 2 years.
Okay, but like a 7-year-old, she's not gonna spread probably anything, and shouldn't I have a choice?
But she can get COVID.
That's what we're saying.
Sure, but
Yeah.
that should be my choice, to put her at that risk or not.
Do you understand?
That's what we're saying, that she
Right,
should.
But he said he wanted to make it an option for masks for 12 and up.
Well, because I was saying we should separate the vote. And that 12 and up,
I don't
maybe
understand.
in the hallways could be different for 12 and up. Whereas under 12, I think they should absolutely be masked in the hallways. Because you're, for the same reason for the buses, because you aren't just coming in contact with the 20 people in your class, especially the way our elementary, middle school works, the way every single person basically funnels through that front.
Like walking down the streets in Mount Harbor?
Oh, it's more, no, you're gonna see
but see-
14, you're gonna see 800, I think it's 840 students plus another 200 staff, so 1,000 people in a close proximity. Yeah, I do think that's different than Bar Harbor. And if, I don't know, what do you think, Ms. Trevor?
I just think, so as a parent, I have a choice. I have a choice to bring my child and let them walk down the street in Bar Harbor without a mask on. My child, I don't necessarily, yes, I can homeschool, but I don't have a choice not to send my child to public school. So I may make that choice to put them in potentially exposure to COVID walking down the street in Bar Harbor, and that's a choice I make. But as a parent, I don't necessarily have a choice of whether or not I send my child through that foyer at the school.
But you could have your child wear a mask if you wanted to.
Right, but the best protection for my child is for my child to wear a mask and the person beside them to wear a mask. And you can, I understand where you're coming from, and I know that my opinion isn't gonna change your opinion, and that's okay, because we're individuals. I'm just saying that some parents, just as uncomfortable as you feel with the masks being on, some parents are just as uncomfortable with them being off. And if we can come to a compromise where there's masking in those areas where they're high trafficked, and then when kids are in their learning areas, can take their masks off and be able to focus for that 2 minutes that you're walking down the hallway, for that 2 minutes that you're walking in the door, that at least that's kind of, where everyone's gonna be closer together.
Right. A statistic between 20 kids and 1,000 people is a massive difference in statistics, period. And as I said, and she's right, if you want to go to Bar Harbor, go ahead, but there's
How long is your
so many
COVID
of them
now?
don't.
The 3 weeks, like, how long do you guys want to keep them in the hallways with the masks? Like, how long are we going to keep this going?
It depends on the,
Until it's completely eradicated?
I think it just depends on the numbers locally, because I mean, so,
But we're not in
You know,
school
it-
right now.
well, no,
Yeah, so we're looking at trends. We're
Right.
Looking at trends.
it's kind of the litmus test.
Folks, we're at 8 o'clock.
Oh,
We're past 8 o'clock.
is there a consensus, of the board to continue? Just say, there's a policy that says the board has 2-hour meetings, they have to have a consensus to move past that. You don't have to vote, but just a nod?
Yes.
Okay.
I think with the 3 weeks, after 3 weeks, we would assess and see where the numbers are. If we haven't seen a transmission at school, and we haven't seen a jump in numbers in cases of kids in the school, then we would come back and reassess and say, okay, do we need them in the hallways if there's no transmission happening? And then if there's no transmission happening, it would likely be voted that we could remove them in the halls. But that also gives us the option that if all of a sudden there's COVID all through our school, it gives us that option to put the masks back on. And
I have a question about the hybrid, masking. So I know it's a little bit different for, the kids falling up in middle school since, because of COVID, they typically travel with their classroom. But in high school, it's a little bit different. Not everybody in my class is going to take theater and dance like I am. So what's the difference in between I'm seeing all these people in all these different classes that I'm taking without our masks on?
Sorry.
Than within the people in our classroom?
I think the consensus right now is that we would do the same thing for 12 and under as we did 12 and up, correct? Masks in the hallways.
I get what you're saying. You're gonna, if
Right,
you're not
no.
gonna be wearing masks at theater,
Right.
or in the,
Yeah,
hall-
well,
you
And you
know,
change
what's the point in
classes
wearing it in the
more.
hallway?
Sure.
Yeah.
Expose all these people.
Because, yeah, she's bringing a very good point.
Right,
She's brought a very good point.
right.
For people, and this is what I'm saying, for high school, even in the hallways, because, yes, they're gonna be all masked in the hallways. Public transportation, sorry, that's, no complaint, federal government or whatever, right? But what I'm saying is, they don't have the same teacher, they don't have the same classes. So it's sort of moot point to have
In the high
them,
school, yeah.
to have them masked anywhere, because it's not going to matter. Logically, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
However, have you ever been in the hallway at the high school when they're switching classes? They're all really, really,
Oh, so you just say
Passive.
that 5 minutes of
Just,
Yes,
yes, just
the-
the
the-
changing classes in the
The
hallways.
passing
is what I'm
time,
saying.
for them to do
So-
6-foot spacing last year, it was a gargantuan effort to get
Right.
kids through the halls. And even when it went to 3 feet, you know, and I can see Dan nodding or shaking his head, I'm not sure which way you're going, Dan. Keeping kids 3 feet apart is a challenge. So they are
Right.
closer together.
The other thing is the
Crowded
contact
areas.
tracing.
Mask in crowded
We-
areas.
So like, if
We
so,
still
I
have-
take 7 classes,
Yeah.
and in theory, kind of, this is unrealistic, but I have 20 different people in these 7 classes, that's 130 people
Mhm.
exposed, plus the 130 people they also expose.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That-
make it make sense.
That brings up another piece, though, and it's another good point, Ryland.
Right, it is.
That's another piece. If we have a positive case in any of the schools,
Yeah,
again, the new SOP just came out today, we're gonna have to review it in detail, but there is still a contact tracing process. There is still likely to be people that are quarantined if they are not vaccinated. We still have to look at those pieces, and in the SOP document, it's talking about the definitions of what a close contact would be. Last year, it said at one point in time, if you're in a classroom, it's an automatic that it's a close contact. That may or may not have changed, but you're right, we still have to do that. So Ryland, in your
Right.
example, you're going to 7 different classes
And you-
with 20 different people, let's say they're all different. If one of those
You-
people, that's a potential of 140 students that could go into quarantine.
yeah.
But if you're also unmasked in the hallway, then it moves up to more of a 200 people potential.
Well, but that's where the passing piece, if you don't have in those areas, if you don't have the cumulative 15 minutes of close contact,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
drops it down.
it drops
Thank
it
God.
down.
it drops it down a bit.
I don't
that
know.
helps.
She brought up a good point. I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the administrators shaking their heads because they still have phobias from contract
I
tracing
know.
last year.
Case, oh,
I just wanted to also bring up that we are, we have sports like volleyball that are gonna be indoors. And so I just wanted to find out if we're gonna allow that option there too.
We've heard, Casey, that the MPA is issuing their new guidance for fall sports probably tomorrow.
So we don't have a
And
choice.
as you know, this board has followed the MPA guidance all along, and one of the pieces that's in this plan is to issue a blanket piece that we will do that. So we don't know what they are. Now, if the board, let's say that they voted to do a mask mandate, which it doesn't sound like right now, that would mean volleyball would be masked. But absent that, I think you'd end up going with whatever the MPA is recommending. So stay tuned for that. I don't know what time during the day it's gonna come out, but it's sometime tomorrow.
That's what I want parents to understand, people to understand, that there are mandates, there are things like on the buses, what the principal, we can't, we have no control over that, right? We're gonna try to make it as mask-free as possible.
5 days a week, as mask-free as possible, while people are still staying healthy.
Yes, that's
That's
all
what we
about
want,
Vitamins.
right? I know, I mean, God love the masks, but I am, but it's good to hear, like, this is a real-life experience. Vaccinated and still having a problem, like, this is something we all need to keep in mind. And it's so great that you came here tonight to talk about this, because really, if you're concerned about this virus, you should go to school, you should go out masked, and you should send your kids to school masked. Absolutely. And, we hope and encourage people to do that. And
And with it being optional, there is nothing saying that a parent can't send their kid to school.
right, and that we expect kids to not be segregated or bullied because one wears a mask and one does not. I think that's really important to say. But yeah, this is something very serious. And as I said, this is a man who's volunteered in our community for decades and, has done an awful lot. And he's saying, this happened. This is his life, and this happened. And he took all these precautions. So we should all take that with a grain of salt, that what is good for us, Because if you got somebody, like, we just buried 2 people from COVID in my family, and they had complications, and, it's sad, and it's horrible, but the fact is, as sick as they were, they'd still be here without COVID. So you gotta weigh that for yourself, and say, what's gonna work for you?
I know you folks are still kind of working through where your optional piece may go, but a couple of things. One thing is, and this kind of piggybacks on what you just said, Abby, If we're talking a 2 or 3 week interval and scheduling a meeting, I'm wondering if it's worth having a conversation on what are the numbers and what are the trends that we should be looking for? Because we all know that, we don't know for certain, but it may or may not happen that you have an outbreak somewhere where it moves really quickly. And what if you can't wait 3 weeks?
We call a special meeting.
Well,
You call a special meeting.
call a special meeting, or you set up metrics that you look at.
Yeah, so the
Maybe-
metrics I
it's
sent to you, I
Well,
looked.
Munir sent some of those today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there because it,
What we need to look.
remember, your bottom line is, and everyone is unanimous on this, is how do we maximize keeping kids and staff in school, in person, 5 days a week?
Yes.
You have an outbreak and have 200 kids at the high school quarantined. What are kids going to miss out on during that quarantine period?
Yeah. So the thing is, we look at trends, okay? Any scientific data, you look at trend. If the trend is going sky high, we mask some more. If the trend is not as bad, then we relax, right? I think we can't be rigid about everything because, number one, we've heard already, and I don't want to repeat it, what masks can do to kids, right? The thing is, but we know what not having a mask also does, right? So we're doing our best to balance everything out. We're looking at the data, we're listening to pediatricians, we're listening to everybody. So I think at this point in time, I think we can just say, I don't know, hybrid masking?
I like it.
I am comfortable with hybrid masking.
I think for today.
For today,
Can we ask for, when you do a motion and a vote on that masking piece, that you give some specificity to it? Because the people in your schools are the ones that are gonna need to carry that out.
so how do we do it, right?
So I think it would be, I make a motion that we start the school year with optional.
Well, yeah, maybe a conversation, before you get to a
Right.
motion, kind of get an idea of what it is that you're all advocating for and moving towards. Script it out, you can base your motion on that.
Juanice?
Yep, I just wanted to remind you as you're voting to consider the results of the survey, which was 54.5% in favor of the optional mask and very much lower for all the other options. So when you're considering, as you're voting on behalf of all parents, just please keep that in mind.
Thank you. All right, so if we're going hybrid model with all the kids, do you feel that we should do it with staff as well? I mean, if, just for consistency, anyone that's in the hallway during a point in time where there's,
I would say masks are optional in the building, with the exception of hallways and the vestibule, and that would, but not even hallway, I guess it would be during switching classes, because if you're just going to the bathroom and you're the only kid in the hallway, you
Right.
don't need a
well,
mask.
no, but also like assemblies.
Yeah.
Right, I'm thinking assemblies and class switching times, not necessarily, like, 'cause I'm thinking the janitors are out and about everywhere. You know, I can't see them putting a mask on every time they move, simply if that load of kids are coming their way.
Right.
You know, because it's classroom times. And same thing with the cafeteria. They're going to see X amount of kids. So where do we stand?
Do we maybe word it when 3-foot social distancing can't be maintained?
Right, I think that's, yeah.
Except while eating.
Right, no, I'm just thinking for the, like the cashier at the school cafeteria, that's the one person that might not be able to maintain a 3-foot, even though that they're there. Obviously, when they're eating, they, you know.
Right.
But,
Well, there are places like that where
right,
the barriers could be put back up. And we've had those in the lunchrooms.
That's the plexiglass things.
Yeah.
oh, okay, great.
That can happen, but I think with your mask piece, again, just bear in mind that the spacing piece is, we do the best we can to get as close to 3 feet as we can, but not at the expense of bringing people in school. So I don't know how much you have to include that in your masking piece.
Right.
'Cause
How about if we say when it can't be maintained outside of the classroom? that cover it?
I'm thinking of the enforcement piece.
I would use caution talking about distancing,
Mhm.
because you're getting the gym class, you're getting the theater, you're getting the other groups that really gets, you're not gonna be able to define that for every activity, and that's really gonna put you in a bind as far as the contractor rule goes.
Well,
I'd consider that a
I'm thinking of the,
class.
I'm thinking of the enforcement of that by our administrators and staff. And that's why I say, that I think the spacing piece is pretty clear, and we heard it this morning, again. You do the best you can to get to 3 feet. Where you can't, don't let it be a barrier, but look at other mitigating pieces. So you haven't even talked about the pool testing piece yet, which can be a help in this, which is another layer. I mean, we're gonna do the symptom checking, somebody asked about that earlier. There's gonna be a new symptom screening checklist that comes out. Whatever the CDC comes out, we're recommending that we go by it. That'll be in place. The ventilation's already in place, the cleaning's already in place. It sounds like you're gonna put some mask pieces in place. The other part of it's gonna be pool testing.
This lady in the very back.
So I think for the hybrid, and maybe some of the administrators want to ask some questions on that about what might it look like. So at the high school, I'm envisioning what you're saying is passing times in the hallways, in the main concourse, masks should be worn. But when I go into my English classroom on the 3rd floor, and I'm at my seat, I can take it off. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm just looking back here. Administrators, thoughts?
I was saying, the only other thing that was discussed last week that's not brought up is that when you left your seat in your classroom that you put your mask on. That's the only thing that you haven't addressed. That's, everything else is the same from last week versus that wasn't addressed this week.
I would say when they leave their seat, it's fine, so long,
Yeah,
it's not
as
leaving
long
the
as-
classroom.
As long as everyone isn't leaving their seat
Right,
altogether.
because I would think if you're in gym class, you're going to be moving around, and I would consider that a class, therefore unmasked. Personally, that's my interpretation. Same thing with theater. That's my interpretation. But this lady in the very back is
Yeah, and
very,
So between classes, I know at the high school, the time frame to get, whether you're on 1st floor or 3rd floor, is very short. So regardless of how many kids is in the hallway that you may pass, getting to your class, hopefully none of them are lagging behind and getting to class on time, and that they're not together for 15 minutes in that time where they would need to be masked. Because they don't have 15 minutes to get from point A to point B, or they're marked tardy or late or whatever for class. I don't know what it is for the middle school, but I do know for the high school that 15 minutes is a long time, and someone's looking for this.
So I think a lot of times, we can spend all night debating when exactly, what time. I think let's get the skeleton, the general idea, let's vote on that, so that we can let the school try it, okay? And then we will see, and then the administrators, or the teachers can tell us, well, this part's really not working. This part's really not working. And then we can adjust accordingly. I think Abby used the right word last week, it's a fluid situation.
Yes.
Right? It is it's very dynamic. We're trying to prevent cases breaking out. We're trying to maximize the time we spend in school and have less content. So I think we can discuss the little detail. What about that corner right there, What about that corner? We'll sit here all night.
Yeah.
So I think let's start with the general idea that we want the hybrid masking model, right? Where a kid is in a classroom, is seated, they can remove, just like I have, remove my mask, right? And then if they're getting up, they have to go somewhere, on the bus, on the corridor, you put a mask on. And then, once you're there, wherever you are, you take it off. In this way, and then we'll look at the cases. If the cases increase, then we have to make it more stringent. If the cases disappear and no more COVID, hey, no more shirts either, right?
Yes.
I'm just curious, because again, we're talking about, data. If the sensor's broken, you don't get good data. The CDC's admitted the test has been broken for the last year and a half. The data's all bad. Excuse me. So if we're judging now based on cases, what I'm hearing is that we need to find a way to eliminate people from getting sick. That's not possible. You must realize that.
Yeah, it's a good point you've raised, and I'm gonna go to that website you suggested for me to look when you're giving your speech. I will look at the data. I'm very critical of the data. I don't know if you were here when I was talking about me being PPD positive
No.
and having TB. So again, I have I'm PPD positive. Technically, I should have TB. I can sing, as you've seen me sing, right? So I think we have to we're being cautious because there's a whole group of parents who've said to us we want kids masked, right? There's a whole group of parents that say, oh, no, we don't want masked. What we're trying to do, if you believe that this virus is real, right, we're trying to do what is best to protect the kids as much as possible without interfering their normal way of being educated, right? Like in a classroom, the face needs to be seen by the teacher, and we understand that. So it is a hard decision. I mean, you say that data is broken. I have evidence that shows the data is not broken. So,
But
I
they're
don't
choosing to eliminate that data stream.
I'm sorry?
They're choosing to eliminate that data stream. The CDC said that they'll no longer be using the PCR test, which has been the primary driver.
That's a good-
I think we need to figure out these pieces in a bit. We can't sit here and debate all
Yeah.
night. I think
Right.
we need to
Well,
wrap
yeah,
up
this is-
masking.
We're saying we're gonna follow the data, and what we're suggesting is that the data is not actually gonna come
I
from a test, it's gonna come from people being sick.
Well, I think that's what we're looking at, is how many people are in the hospital with COVID at the moment this week? How many are in the local hospitals next week? How many pediatric cases are we seeing? Those are the hard data pieces that I'm looking at. I'm not making decisions on our school based on what I just saw happening down south, because we're not them, because we're not acting like them. We're not getting those ridiculous cases down there, because we have exercised a lot more caution, and we have had so many more people decide for themselves to get the vaccine. So we are in a different situation. So we are basing these decisions on what we see locally.
Thank you, Abby. So let's move on from mask conversation and start talking about pool testing piece.
Do we need to make a motion and do this, though?
Do we do
Because I think that
separately
they
or
could
all
be
together?
all together, I think,
Okay.
unless
You
we
do
can't.
approve a plan with specific components about masking and testing. Like I said
Yeah,
at the
so it
outset,
could be
the
all
document
together.
that was given to you last week, everything was pretty good except for masking and testing.
Yeah.
Could we separate those two components, though, into two separate motions?
Like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
No, I can't say the motion things.
I'll make a motion that we adopt a masking plan that our students and staff are masked on the bus, and they are masked in hallways during the changing of classes,
In any crowded areas.
Assemblies.
assemblies.
In any crowded area,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last.
In any crowded areas.
In any crowded areas
above 20.
above, let's say 25, just.
Yeah, 25 children.
Did you get all that, Dan?
No,
It was a work in progress and a rolling motion.
But that, yeah, that way, in case there's a lot of people in the library at once, until maybe one class leaves, then then the class coming in can take their masks off once the other
Do-
class
do-
leaves,
Can
because we
you just
have
get
it,
off
so.
the bus and just take the masks off and see where it goes from there? Please, Lord, please. I
We-
mean, just let them get off
You know,
the bus.
I just don't think we're comfortable with that yet. I think we need to go through the litmus test. We need to make this happen and see if this doesn't, if we can do this and we have no more cases, then we can reassess then.
Abby,
Yeah,
help me with this. Instead of trying to put it in the form of a motion, help me with this. If you're putting it in motion, buses is that's taken care of. You don't have to
Yep.
put that in your motion. That's there. So where are you intending kids and staff to be masked and where not?
Crowded areas above 20 people.
25, just because
25.
I'm thinking teachers, ed techs, et cetera.
Okay, yeah, 25.
Approximately.
That's it. Anywhere crowded. So if it's the bathroom, there are all 25 people in the bathroom.
So you're saying masks any place there's
That
25
would
or
be
more
a
people?
crowded bathroom.
Yeah.
Indoors, not
Indoors.
outdoors.
Yes, Travis?
Just so everybody's aware, I'm kind of nervous about the 25 number, because we have classes of 22, we might have 2 ed techs, which means
Right.
that class is the only class in the building that would have to mask. So if you're gonna pick a number.
Maybe
could we
30?
make it A little bit higher than
Would 30 be better?
Could we
30
just,
would work in everything we have for 5, 8, except.
How about a range, 20 to 30?
instead of a number, could we just say when maintaining a 3-foot distance is impossible? Or not possible, or
No, because then in the classrooms, if they're closer than 3 feet.
Right,
outside the classroom?
Just be a choice, just be a choice, you can't. It's too complicated.
This whole COVID is complicated, but this is what we've got, and this is where we have to be, you know, this is where we have to go. Nothing is gonna be perfect. There's not a vote we're gonna make that's gonna make everybody happy.
We're done talking
Yeah,
about
we're
masks.
done
We need to
talking.
come up with a motion.
Yeah, so,
I say we make a motion and that
okay, let's write it down.
the kids
Write it down.
need to be masked on the bus,
The bus we don't care.
in hallways, in areas in which more than 30 people are gathered. Hallways in which changing classes, I should say, because if they're in a hallway when there's just, you know, them, it would be fine. And this is only indoors.
I think you could even make that be just masks are optional with the exception of high traffic areas.
That works.
And then it's just,
High traffic areas,
Yeah.
perfect.
But do we need to,
and then
Like
it gives, but that also gives a little bit of discretion to the teacher. If
Okay.
they're taking their 20 students to art and there's no other kids in the hallway, then maybe they don't have to put on their mask when they're switching to that class. It will, if it's
High
high
traffic.
traffic, it gives some discretion.
I like the simplicity of your language. I just want to be the devil's advocate. Are we putting any of our staff members in a place where I'm asking my kids to wear a mask and I'm not?
No,
That's
I
where I
think
wanna be
teachers
careful.
should be wearing masks.
Yeah, the
when
same for the
kids are.
teachers. The
No,
teachers.
I meant,
yeah.
I've got 29 kids and I'm saying no. Travis has got 29 kids and he's saying yes.
Well, that's why I say high traffic areas. Like if there's 29 kids in a classroom, that's not a traffic area where kids are up and
Okay.
mingling and moving around
And
and about.
Masks
By-
optional with the exception of high traffic areas for all students and staff?
Yeah. So what what would need to happen then is I think the principals, the staff would have to define where the high traffic areas are.
but I think giving him a couple weeks to feel it out too is
Yeah.
also kind of, that's,
So if it's masks are optional with the exception of high traffic areas for all students and staff, is that pre-K through 12 for
Pre-K
adult
through
ed?
12.
Is that everybody?
Everybody.
I think adult ed, you don't
I
have
think we
high
just-
traffic areas,
I
right?
think we just make it blanket, and
We make it
if there's no
blanket.
high traffic area, then they don't ever have to wear them.
Pre-K through 12.
Yeah.
No, for everybody, I thought, not only K to 12.
Adult ed also.
Yes.
Yes, every single individual that has a lung.
You don't have the ability to make that rule.
A lung, I like it.
If you have lungs,
If you have a
Okay,
lung.
so before you go vote on this, I want to ask, because we've also got facility usage by groups of the public.
same,
Yeah.
Okay, so,
But then
Casey
we-
mentioned volleyball. We don't know what the MPA guidelines are going to be, but you're going to have more than 30 people in the gym watching a volleyball game.
Yes, but they can be spread
They
out.
can be spread
It's,
out.
they're not.
it's not high traffic area.
But I'm just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, because, you know, are we going to ask people to do things differently? You know, you've got.
I think sports is a different, we're gonna talk about the MPA guidelines,
Rotary-
and that will be a different.
Rotary Pancake Breakfast is coming up. They want to be in the school on the 25th.
But I bet the Rotary's gonna have their own guidelines for whether or not.
I know, but it's still our school and it's, I mean.
Our school, and again, they'll be eating and they'll be inside the
Right.
cafeteria, right, Travis?
That's what they've asked for.
Yes.
Right, inside the cafeteria, unmasked, and we're talking, what, 200?
Which they would be anyway if they're eating.
Yeah. But
But they're sitting and eating,
there are all
not
kinds of
running
other
around.
ones. I can tell you, Mrs. Wright's not here, but, you know, we want to host a drama festival. And you're having people come in. The theater, where you have somebody performing at a concert, those people are in an enclosed theater. If you have a full house in there, you're talking 375 people. Are they masked or not?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if
We can
No, but
go
I'm-
every permutation, I think.
But-
I don't think the Rotary breakfast is gonna work out. I think because you're getting to a point where they cannot be, they have to be unmasked, and yet they're gonna exceed our guidelines of, so I just don't see how that could work out in our buildings, quite frankly. If they were to do it outside in a tent,
Yeah, I think that's another, I see where you're coming from, Dan, and why you're asking that question, 100%. But I think if we stick with the term high-traffic areas, like I would consider, even if you're not moving around, if you've got 200 people in a room, I would consider that to be a
High traffic,
high-traffic area.
because you have to.
Can you read that motion back to us, Dan?
What I've got written down is the motion of masks, and we're starting the year with masks will be optional for all students and staff. Masks will be optional with the exception of high-traffic areas for all students and staff, pre-K through adult education.
And with the understanding that that's a rolling, that's a fluid,
If I
yeah.
put, we'll begin the year.
Yep,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect. Yep. That sounds pretty.
So is that the motion that Abby made?
Of course it is.
Does someone want to second that?
I'll second that. That was exactly the words I heard come out of Abby's mouth.
Discussion?
So Abby motion, Kelly second?
Beth
Beth second, okay, all right, thank you.
For discussion, I just want to briefly state that while I appreciate what we're trying to achieve here, I'm not going to be comfortable voting for this motion. I think that deviating from the recommendation of Dr. McGregor and the pediatric team, I have deep qualms about that. And I also think this motion contains a lot of things that are going to be hard to interpret, and it's going to be difficult to enforce. I'd rather see us, as I said earlier, begin the year fully masked and then revisit it shortly afterwards.
and
That's
I
all.
respect your ideas on that. Your ideas come from a real-life experience point of view, and I
Well,
respect that.
And I also I respect everyone's talking about personal choice, but when your choice affects other people adversely, we have to reconsider whether choice is the best way to go. That's all.
Thank you, Paul. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, now we can start the pool testing discussion.
Can we order a pizza first?
Right? Who wants to bring back pizza?
Or anybody have cupcakes? I will.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Before we start the conversation on pool testing, can I take a restroom break?
Yes, of course you can.
Note to self, this should be fixed in a minute.
Mics are still
Oh,
on.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's gotta be fixed in the minutes.
Should have brought some water.
I'm sorry, I know, I had,
So
it was a
just on
2-can night for me, and
procedurally,
it's,
Kelly,
I'm
so
like,
We'll have the mask
and
piece.
there's a
There'll be
water
a motion,
fountain
I
if you
presume,
dare to
on
use.
pool testing.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering, should we also vote on the overall plan with masks separate? When I say the plan, it's,
Joel,
was
man,
this that we sent to all
can't
the
believe you're
guys.
still hanging
We
in
were
here after
separate.
the long,
The
I'd say
only
long
changes I
day,
would make
but
to it
long
would be to
week,
comply
long
with
month, long 2
the
years
decision
you've
on
had.
masking and testing.
You're kind of,
Does that make sense?
you're a
Yeah,
rock
but
star.
say it again.
So, you've come as a group to a position with masking, and you voted on it. Pool testing's the next conversation. Everything else in this plan was pretty much agreed to, with the exception of, and I'll update, parents, vendors, approved volunteers with regard to masks. So you vote on,
I know.
vote on that, you vote on pool testing, but should also vote on the entire plan
I
as
know.
amended to
Also, I
comply
know.
with masks and pool testing.
I
We'll come
can't
to that.
follow
when we get to this.
down that
Does that make,
rabbit
does that
hole.
make sense, though?
Yes, it
I will.
does, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we starting?
As soon as
I'm
Beth
just
comes
waiting
back.
for Beth.
I'm here, I'm sorry.
Nope.
I drank too much.
How
Muneer's got no
embarrassing
water,
is
I
that having
drank
to
too
open a
much water.
can? So did the one.
Like in a desert.
Okay,
All right,
I was doing that.
let's move on to pool testing.
I was surprised by the number of people who said that they would be okay with pool testing, and that I was surprised that the number that just straight out, flat out said no was as low as it was. And I know that's
What's the
not.
numbers again?
Yeah, it was like,
the numbers on the,
it was like 36% said that they would need more information, 20% said that they would agree. And I don't
Opt-in
remember
was
the-
23.5%, opt-out was 40.5%, and they'd like more information was 36%. So I was surprised by those numbers
Yeah.
as well, Beth.
Yeah.
Let's make it optional.
well, and I think it needs to be optional. I think one of the pieces, and I had this conversation with some of the colleagues in Hancock County, we're just bringing 2 new school nurses on. They're gonna work with Jackie over the next couple of weeks, and they'll be starting right at the beginning of school. I would like for them to be involved in the conversation of, if we vote to move forward with it and adopt it, of how it's gonna be implemented. Jackie is also willing to be part of overseeing it. A couple of other pieces that the DOE and the company that's running it are providing some administrative support and also staffing support to come in, and in some cases, at least in the part where you're setting it up, to come in and actually help administer and gather the samples. I also know that we can file the application and obtain the CLIA waiver. If we decide at some point down the road to say, no, we don't want to do it, we can do that.
Okay, here's my question with pool testing, okay? So, student A says, yeah, I'm totally cool with pool testing. So, student A gets pool tested with some other people in that classroom, comes back positive. Granted, this person said they want to be a part of it. What about person B who's in that classroom who did not say they want to be a part of it? Now, this person, they have to go to a doctor's office, they have to get tested because this person became positive.
Or they
My
quarantine.
my understanding of the model is you do the test of the people who have opted in. Okay? If in that pod of people, say it's a classroom, there is a positive test from that, people who have opted into the program do not have to quarantine, but that there is a follow-up test that is done.
So they don't have to quarantine even if they test positive?
We don't know who tested positive, so.
You don't know who tested positive.
Okay, I
But
gotcha.
if there's a positive case in that room, and there are people in that room who are close contacts who are not vaccinated and not asymptomatic, then yes, they would have to quarantine.
So this person who did not opt into this
Yep.
test has to quarantine.
But that would happen anyway if somebody shows up.
It would happen
positive.
anyway, but unless they are vaccinated and asymptomatic.
But
And
that's
that
even-
would be the case where we would be asking people, are you vaccinated? If you are, you need to show us.
So I think, Abby, if somebody shows up positive, whether we are testing it, or Walgreens is testing it, or Mr. Cuckoo Bananas is testing it, right? If a kid shows up positive, we're gonna be doing the same thing with this, right? That's been the
Yes and no.
operation method.
And here's why. So you know how last week we had that spike and they were like, oh, well, Hancock has to mask up? That was a massive series of false positives. And it had a domino effect. What happened was my friend when it collapsed from what we now know is a heart attack, was taken to Blue Hill ER, tested. Every single person who was tested in Blue Hill ER that day was told they were positive. He was then transferred to Eastern Maine, where he was put in a COVID unit for 2 days and did not get the immediate surgery on his heart that he needed. His survivor rate went from 90% to 3% because they waited 2 days. And it turned out every single person that was tested that day by Blue Hill, they were all false positives. They tested every single one came back positive, and it took 2 days for the CDC to figure that out. In the meantime, it's literally almost cost my friend their life. They're fighting for their life right now. And my thing is, we have so many people in our town whose family and parents are small business owners. Their co-pays for a doctor's visit are like $75 a piece, plus other expenses like for the tests.
I think it's covered.
If you have to go to the doctor,
No, I think it's covered, right?
If-
Yeah?
Walgreens, I think, is free testing, but it's.
Walgreens.
I'm sorry, if Walgreens is where you go when you want a negative test, whether you're negative or not. That's how, I'm saying these tests are that inaccurate.
So if-
And that there is a domino effect that we do have to consider about this.
So if one person in that classroom tests positive, does everybody have to get tested, or is that an option, and if you're symptomatic, you quarantine?
Parents have to consent and opt
Right,
in. Okay,
right.
We cannot.
But we're not gonna
cannot
say
make-
to every student in that class, one person came back positive, so now everybody has to go get tested.
So this person
No,
who
but
opted out would
what
still have
we've-
to get tested?
Yeah,
or
what we've
quarantined?
done and what we would follow, again, at the time of day that the new SOP came out, I have not gone through every line of it, but presuming that the contact tracing is the same way, we have the positive in a classroom, we identify the close contacts. What we would do is inform them, if you are not fully vaccinated and asymptomatic, you're required to quarantine, and we recommend that you consult with your family's physician about getting a follow-up test.
Right.
People who have opted into the program,
I don't have to take my kid to get a test. I could just keep my kid on quarantine.
you could. People that are part of the pool testing program would follow up with the second test.
Right, and that would
and
be
they-
something
they
I would
would-
have opted
They would
into.
not have to quarantine.
So they have an advantage and they don't. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, they only have an advantage because
Because they
don't
opted in.
because they don't have to quarantine if they come back negative.
Because they've
Right, the
opted
second
into
test.
this
There's a
program.
clear advantage to be part of the pool testing. There's a clear advantage.
Yeah.
Because that gives you the option of knowing whether you're positive or not. And you don't have to go see the family, which doctor, not which doctor, just doctor.
However, there is a clear disadvantage when you have
And I
both
get
false negatives and false positives.
Look, we're giving people a choice.
Well, we see, we're giving these people a choice, but these people aren't. This
No,
is what I'm
they're
saying.
having a
Well, they're
choice.
having a
They have a
choice,
choice.
but they're having a choice, but they're getting punished for not being in this group. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's your choice.
And that, so this, and
But I
as I
get what
just
Abby's saying.
described, there's also domino effects as to what happened to their loved ones at home as
and
well.
if that soda can't afford to get the testing and doesn't have good health insurance, then maybe that soda's parents opt out for that reason, and then it's putting that family in a disadvantaged position because of. I get what she's saying. I get it.
But what if we do it and this person really does have COVID,
Right?
and then they could be spreading
then
it
everybody
through the
is
entire
quarantined,
classroom?
But
yeah.
but are we not catching those ones quick already? Because I kind of feel like we are.
I think this is more
Well,
like an
think-
asymptomatic kind of.
The thing about pool testing is if it's done on, like, say, once a week, which I think is what the recommendation is, then you're catching, this is what the FAQ sheet that they sent us says, that the PCR test is very accurate, and it can detect infections that have not yet produced a very high viral load. So even people who are going to go on to become symptomatic may not be symptomatic yet. So,
So they may not be coughing their germs everywhere yet.
right, but the point is that they would not have had a reason to seek out a test because they had no reason to think that they were sick. But you can catch it before they're coughing out their germs. And if you do this once a week, And it's an inexpensive way to test a lot of people because you're pooling it, you know. You don't have to give separate individual tests. And it'll give us a chance to sort of find out if the virus is starting to make its way into our schools, and we can intercept it and not let it spread. So in the long run, it's going to be less expensive, less disruptive, less quarantining. If it works the way they describe it, I think it's going to be a big benefit to us.
If
But I
we
think
start doing it, are we stuck doing it?
No.
My
you can opt out
understanding is
anytime.
no, and I can share with you that what's been shared from the DOE, you know, a number of school systems did do some of it last spring. A larger number did it over the summer with their summer programs. Most of the places are reporting that it went relatively well. A couple of hiccups getting started, but that it went relatively well. So no, to answer your question, Beth, that's just an additional piece of information, but no, we can apply, we can get approved for the program, but I believe that we can stop if we decide we want to.
Could we start doing it for the first 3 weeks, and if it's,
I think
is that, I mean, I'm not gonna put a time limit
I
on it,
think we
I'm
can
just saying that if we get started and we're like, this isn't working, this is not what we're looking for, this is putting too many people at a disadvantage, this is, you know, this, that, and the other thing, can we
stop.
then say,
We can stop,
we're done?
yeah.
it's optional, and it's optional whether people want to participate.
And it's family choice,
Yeah,
right?
and I think
And the percentage that said no was, what was that number?
No was 40%.
See, and we don't expect 100% of families to say yes.
You don't need.
Pool testing,
It's
yeah,
pool
but
testing.
what I'm saying is we're, and some of that 40% may have said no because they didn't have the proper health insurance. Some of them may have said no because they're just not comfortable with the process. Like, they all have different reasons for saying no, so not all of that 40% is, it's not a financial decision for all 40%.
And go ahead, Paula.
Sorry, no, I just wanted, I made this observation in our workshop. I think there's a lot about pool testing that people don't understand. I mean, there's a lot I don't understand, and I've been working to try to understand it. So it's a new concept for a lot of people, and it's because it's new, and I think it's understandable that people are hesitant, you know, to participate in it. So if we were gonna do it, we should also not only decide to do it, but do, you know, work on educating our community on how it works and how it benefits us. But that'll take some effort.
Yep. I also feel that since we're not mandating masks, this may help those families who felt strongly about having all kids masks. It might just
Help them feel a
give
little
them-
bit more secure.
Yeah. Yep.
And so just real quickly, so if we have our child vaccinated, they can't participate in this because they're,
They can.
they
No,
can?
they
Okay,
can.
I wasn't sure if they would give a skewed,
No,
okay.
no, no.
Okay.
It's okay.
It doesn't
I mean,
matter.
I like
Yeah.
everybody to have their freedom of
The o-
choice. I
the
do,
only-
I just.
Yeah.
Abby, the only people who can't participate is people who have had COVID, and it's less than 3 months since they recovered.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after 3 months from their recovery, then they can get back into the pool
Because
testing.
they'll
But
show up.
but you don't want them in the pool testing because, yeah,
They'll show up.
they'll show up positive, and that just, you know,
Okay.
That skews your results everywhere.
yeah.
All right, good. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll try.
You can do this.
I make a motion to give parental choice to opt in pool testing for the school
I think-
year 2021.
Can I suggest a modification of that?
Yeah,
Because I think choice
Let's go ahead,
is
man.
baked into this, if we do this. So I think the motion should be that we're going to sign up for pool testing and if we want to mention that it's optional, but it is, sign up for the pool testing program offered by the state. And that includes the optional part.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to say that.
I can put in parentheses, like I think we did in the survey, it's sign up for the pool testing program being offered by the Department of Education, consent-based.
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect.
I second.
No, you first did it. That was,
I
that was,
thought
ex- that was what you
I
said.
made a
said
friendly-
wrong English.
That
I
was,
think it-
that was what you said.
Yeah,
It
but he,
just
yeah.
came out of,
Right. You wanna second this?
No, I basically, I made the motion, and now you can second.
Oh, okay.
So you've got Paul and Munir.
Yeah.
Discussion?
I'm going with Paul and Munir on this one. You guys have been on the fence on this, but that's really something that you guys all were vaccinated and that happened. Like, that's no joke.
All those in favor?
And Mia was the motion, who was the second?
Paul was
Paul was
the
the
motion.
motion,
Paul
Munir
was
was the
the-
second.
Yep.
So confusing.
It is confusing.
Try to read my notes.
Okay, so now we're finally on number 3, and we've only got like 5 pages
We
left.
let our admin
Although,
go.
hold on, I think Dan wants us to,
Okay, thank you, Kelly, I'm glad you reminded. So, you voted on 2 components of the overall plan, right?
Yes.
Remember last week when we sent you this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think you should vote to approve the return to school plan as modified by your actions on masking and pool testing.
okay.
So I make a motion to approve the presented plan with the modifications made to masking and pool testing.
I second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Boom.
Thank you.
Who seconded it?
Abby.
You guys are way too fast for me.
I'm so tired, I couldn't even remember if I did. I was like,
You're like, who did that?
wait. I still have the worst jet lag.
I'm getting hangry.
All right,
Excellent.
all right, moving on to number 3. Acknowledgement of the Personnel Committee action on behalf of the board.
I would like to make a motion to acknowledge the Personnel Committee's action on behalf of the board in confirming the superintendent's nomination in the following teachers with a first-year probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year. That is Eric Terrell for full-time health teacher at EHS and Janet Bertrand for math interventionist at EEMS.
I second that. Discussion? All those in favor? All right, number 4 would be consideration of superintendent nomination of staff. Is nothing to bring
I
forward.
don't have one for you tonight, but
Good.
Paul and Kelly, as personnel committee members, just be prepared for an email coming soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm always prepared for that, Dan.
Number 5, discussion and consideration of disposition of additional school subsidy.
Okay, that was Finance Committee. This one came in your packets later in the day. Have you had a chance to read it, or do you want me to give you the quick overview? Or Paul or Mini, or do you want to do it? All right. At the July 13th board meeting, you folks had a discussion on what to do with the additional subsidy, $696,000 and change. You asked the Finance Committee to move forward with working on a plan and taking some of the input that you had. I think there was consensus around the table on the 13th that it'd be a combination of the 3 options, which are to increase expenditures in approved categories, potentially put some into reserve, and provide reduction in tax assessment to the locals. So, several meetings took place after that. One of them was myself, Paul and Munir, who are the Finance Committee members, and Carolyn Heller, our business manager. We met and discussed options for disposing that. From that meeting, we came with the next step, which would be to direct Carolyn Heller and I to meet with City Manager Mosier and Finance Director Josh McIntyre, Assistant Finance Director Jen Merchant, to talk about what the Finance Committee talked about in their initial meeting. Paul and I then, because we were the only ones available, met with the city's Finance Committee on Friday, August 6th, to take forth a concept, got some feedback, and then our Finance Committee, Paul Munir, met with me on August 9th. So, just to give you a quick piece, it was very clear that what was being recommended was to increase expenditures in 2 areas, 2 categories. One, you remember you approved an increase in the health position at the high school from half-time to full-time. It was to increase funding by $35,764.82 in the regular instruction category for that expense, to increase expenditures in the CTE cost center for $91,850 for the replacement boiler, for a total increase of $127,614.82. So that's how much you'd be increasing the budget. Initially, when the Finance Committee met, they were looking at having a creation of a tax stabilization reserve in the amount of $450,000. And Paul, you can probably say it better than I did because it was your words. So correct me if I misquote you.
Okay.
I think it was, it's still providing money to reduce the local tax appropriation for education, but spreading it over more than a one-year period, not doing it all in 1 year.
Right, so that's why it's called a tax stabilization fund, to stabilize our taxes going forward for the next 3 or 4 years. But also allowing us to keep it within the Ellsworth School Department's budget.
And at the $450,000 level, that would have been reducing the local tax burden by about $119,000, compared to last year.
Yeah.
When that concept was taken to meet with the city's finance committee, which was, I believe, Councilor Blanchett, Councilor Grindle, Mayor Hamilton was also there, and I believe
When was
aforementioned
there?
city manager and
City
finance
manager and
office.
Finance director, and, yeah, and the assistant finance director.
Had a real good conversation, some questions asked, some around, if you go with a pool testing piece, you need to be prepared for additional costs. Again, for me, when I look at the pool testing piece, the impact that I'm seeing is potentially, if we have students who need to be quarantined, the impact is going to be on them being out of school. It may be on families in their home. It may be on employees, depending on how, but that may be a cost anyway. I don't see a direct cost to the school department. If there are any costs to be borne with that, we also have the American Recovery Plan funds, which can be used to address those. But that was one concept brought up, and I think one of the counselors on the Finance Committee advocated for, said it was a responsible proposal, thought that the $450,000 figure might be a little bit high, but did not seem to be opposed. And one counselor thought it should be a higher level return to the taxpayers this year. From that meeting, and when I met with Paul and Munier on Monday, they've come to kind of a compromise in what's being presented to you. Still add to the budget by $127,614.82. Create a tax stabilization reserve of $369,067.85, and reduce the local tax burden for FY22, year that we're just in now, by $200,000. So that is the recommendation. Well, I also included in your packets, and you can look at these at your leisure, just these budget summary sheets that show you what the budget was when it was a $6,000 increase to the local tax burden. If you approve this action and recommend to the council that they consider and support it, you'd be talking about a reduction of $200,000, and this just shows that to you. It also reflects the increases in the two cost center categories. So, Paul Munier, did I get it? Did I miss it?
Pretty much.
You got it, yeah.
All right.
Boom.
Thank you.
I might add that by statute, the determination of what to do with this increased subsidy from the state is entirely the school board's prerogative to decide. It's not it's not a required, we're not required to negotiate with the city. We did present it to the city, our initial idea, listened to their response, to their finance committee's response, and then came back with as Dan said, a compromise where we are giving more back to the city at this time for property tax relief. But we feel like this is a fair solution to this good fortune that we've received. And I think it's got, either way, the effect on any individual homeowner or property owner would have been very small. It still, I think, represents a good faith effort on our part to work with the city and be partners with them in these matters.
I think we negotiated in good faith.
Yeah.
And I'm a property tax, I have property too, so it's like, give it here, take it there, so.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
You have a motion?
Okay.
So is this number 5?
Yes.
To approve, make a motion to approve the disposition of additional school subsidy for 2021, 2022, and submit to the Ellsworth City Council with a recommendation for council support as recommended by the Finance Committee.
I'll second that. Discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Higgins, other than student parent handbooks, is there anything else that our administrators would have to be here for? I'm wondering
I
if
don't
we
think
could
so.
do that next, so they could go home.
If you as a board would like to amend the agenda and move that item up, feel free to do it.
Make a motion to move the agenda item about the school handbook up so we can expedite these people.
I've got your word, Nabby.
Perfect.
I second that.
Everyone seconds. All those in favor, boom.
All those in favor?
All right, great.
Right, he's ready. He's ready to run out the door when we're done.
I
Out.
sent you those handbooks. That represents a lot of work on the part of these folks in the back of council chambers. And at least one that's not here. I think Mrs. Wright had something to do with that too, didn't you, Dan? I'm still giving you credit. I'm still giving you credit.
So I read through them, and the only thing that I noticed, there were a couple, I want to say middle school and maybe high school, where under immunizations, it allowed it an opt-out for philosophical and religious reasons, and I believe the law has changed.
That is correct. The law has changed. Late in the school year, Jackie and Chris sent out a letter notifying parents of that. So before these go out, those should be changed to reflect that while our policy is revised, and our policy committee talked about this yesterday, while our policy is revised, we are, to reflect that, we are going by what the state law is.
Yeah.
I think the high school got that. I had that conversation with Mrs. Wright, so it'll just be one to double check. The other thing it doesn't include, anything that's impacted by your actions here tonight
Yeah,
will be updated.
okay. Excellent.
Anyone have anything else?
Make a motion to approve the student parent handbooks as presented.
I second that. Discussion? All those in favor? Bye, guys.
You guys are welcome to stay, but
Yes.
you're also welcome to go.
We know how much fun you've had this evening.
Yes. Miss Gabbianelli, Lucas was very sad.
I know.
He said, no offense to you, Mr. Wood, but he said, no one will be as good as Miss Gabbianelli because she knows all of our names.
Yeah.
She always says hello to all of us when we come in the door.
Yeah.
So,
We're gonna miss you.
we're gonna miss you. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Bye, Judith.
Thank you all.
Night, guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Number 6, discussion and consideration of EHS roof and EHS gym bleachers replacement bids.
Yes.
So we met yesterday, was that yesterday? Oh my
Seems
gosh,
like a
I don't even know,
lifetime
it
ago.
does. And we discussed the bids, and I'm sure that you guys saw those in your emails. So we did end up going with the lower bid, but more than anything, it was the fact that this particular roofing company has the shingles that we need for that section in stock, ready to go. So we don't have to worry about how long it could take with COVID to get those shingles in, because that's obviously a big determining factor right now. And we discussed and went over the bleachers. We did talk about, this is one of those things that's in the budget over the course of time. So we're doing one section and then we'll do the other once in the next budget. And it's the same with the roof. The roof is broken down in pieces over the course of time. We did discuss whether or not we wanted to talk to Williams to see if they might be willing to order the materials for the next section of roof, just because with with all the COVID stuff, it can be
Shortages.
really difficult to get them, and we may be talking 6-8 months before they could get them in hand again. But with that comes additional costs, but also Williams having to store
Right.
however many that was. And Dan did mention that it has been assessed, so the odds of us needing shingles in an emergent situation before we would be ready to proceed with them next year is very slim.
Great, thank you.
And the only other piece was, if something were to come up, you know, back when we did the budget, we were talking about recommending that some of the funds left over from prior year budgets would go into a capital reserve, so there's a source of funding there in the
Yes.
event that you need it.
Yes, so should part of the roof start leaking really, really, really badly, we could use some capital reserve funding to pay for that if we needed to.
Wonderful, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the bid from Williams Roofing for replacing the roof at Ellsworth High School as presented and recommended by the Facilities and Transportation Committee.
Second,
Discussion? All those in favor? Do I have a motion for the bleachers?
I make a motion to approve the bid from A Plus Athletics Protection for replacing the bleachers at Ellsworth High School as presented and recommended by the Facilities and Transportation Committee.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
We're so close. Yes.
Discussion and consideration of equipment purchase bids. Finance Committee.
all right, so I should just read the motion, or you should tell me what happened?
We had 2 bids for a burnisher. And I'm not sure why this is Finance Committee. Burnishers is something you ride on, right?
Chariot burnishers,
Yeah.
two of them, yes.
Yeah, so shouldn't it be transportation, facilities and transportation? I'm just kidding.
It's 9/12, and he's using his sense of humor.
Paul's like, actually, shouldn't we send this back?
We got one bid that was quite a bit lower than the other, and our Chuck Turnbull was very much in favor of this machine. He thought it would do a great job for us, and he had no compunction about recommending the much lower bid. So we're not giving anything up in quality by accepting a lower bid on this one, so
Great.
it was an easy choice for us to make.
Motion?
I make a motion to approve the bid from Cleanorama for chariot burnishers as presented and recommended by the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
What about those
Do you want
cheering
to
mats?
talk about cheering, Paul, or?
Yeah.
is it- Yeah, Lanier?
You want to talk about it?
You can talk about it.
All right, so, we had a bid for these cheering mats, we had 2 bids. One bid was more expensive than another one, but the quality of the more expensive one was far superior and was recommended by the athletic director. Is it the athletic director?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and the price was twice as much for the expensive one, but the quality, and it's local,
Mhm.
so we could get more sort of leverage on it. And sometimes buying cheap things, you end up buying more of it.
Yeah,
And
twice.
It was from a vague
Mhm.
website too. It's like, well, maybe we should do this, so.
Great.
We think Mr. Frost thinks we'll get more years of use out of these
Yep.
better quality ones, so it'll end up actually saving us
Saving.
money in the long
Yeah.
run.
Actually, it's Mr. Wood.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
Mr.
whoops.
Wood,
Mr.
has
Wood.
it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're
Just want to give
EMS.
credit where credit's due. It's White Sporting Goods, who's a vendor we use a lot.
Yes.
The other piece is, with the cost of them, we're still able to do it with what was budgeted, because over the years, your cheering coach at the middle school has done a great job with fundraising, in part to get mats, so she's supplementing the cost through what she had raised for funds.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the bid from White Sporting Goods for EMS cheering mats as presented and recommended by the Finance Committee.
I second that.
Discussion?
He was ready.
I
All those
thought-
in favor? Okay, discussion and consideration of curriculum resource for middle school social studies.
We are still exploring that, and we'll come back. We'll let you guys know hopefully early next week.
Abby, you did a good job explaining that earlier. Can I just add something? Of
course.
I thought the meeting was really good, and as Abby mentioned, they're taking the resources that were put together by our curriculum coordinator, instructional coach, principal, and teachers, and working with some parents. And I think what they wanted to do was see if we could schedule a special meeting next week because of the time factor in placing an order for the teachers. So I had put an option in here to table this item until a special meeting can be scheduled. I don't know if that's where the board wants to go. That's why that's in there. And I would ask Abby Menier, do you think you can have something in place so that we could reach out and contact Penny across this, well, she's down the hall now, not across the parking lot.
I'm hoping so. We're shuffling, I said we have to get the books, the textbooks, get them to people who need to look at them in person.
Okay.
So we are trying for next week.
Maybe later next week?
That's what I'm really
So-
hoping for.
So this motion would offer you the week of the 16th, which leaves it open. It doesn't set a date.
Okay.
Could we edit it to just be a special meeting to be scheduled as soon as possible?
Yeah, however you'd like to make the motion.
Go
Just-
for it, Beth.
That's a recommendation, not a
It's
mandate.
already Thursday,
My recommended motion is a recommendation, not a
I think it might be
mandate.
Friday at this
right?
point.
So I'll make a motion to table this item until a special meeting can be scheduled as soon as possible as recommended by the curriculum committee.
I'll second that. Discussion? All those in favor? Discussion and consideration of increasing size of the Ellsworth School Board. Abby, you wanna?
So, yeah, I had brought this up because, I have a lot of concerns about retaining good board members like Menier and Jen Alexander with the amount of workload we have. This was something that at one point was reasonable to the amount of hours in which, we signed on for, and it has become, I was away for a couple weeks. I worked every day. I worked 6 hours some days. I took meetings all the time. I think that becoming a board of 7 is a really good idea because we need to be well-rounded. We need to have those different voices on the board, and we also need to, I think we need to look at the workload. I think there's an awful lot of workload on the chair, whoever sits in it. I think the chair needs to have time to be the chair and maybe sit on one committee here, and one committee there, maybe, depending on the year and the time, how it goes. I also think that, we have proven that there is a lot of interest. We've had a lot of people, when we were appointing, we had a lot of people apply, and good quality, wonderful people. And on top of that, I think when I look at the budget, our budget is almost half the city budget. We have more employees in the city. And on top of that, we have a responsibility to all of these kids in our city and other cities. It is a big job. Sometimes I think we should actually have more committees than we do. And I think it's very reasonable that we be a board that is the same size as the city council. They're 7, we're 5. I think it would be helpful for board retention and for hearing the most voices in Ellsworth by becoming a board of 7.
I don't think that I don't necessarily think that the workload would be reduced by having 7, but I do agree with that 7 people you get some, even if there's not less work, it's like the pressure, you know that you have more people to rely on and to reach out to in different committee situations or in different situations, and also to answer questions and to represent different opinions on the board. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. I don't know how much it will impact the workload, but I agree with you, Abby. With the amount of with what we're responsible for as a district, it's important to have, like you said, at least a board as big as the city council
I'm not opposed to having a larger board either. I think it would be great. The more perspectives we have on a board, the better. I worry about the timing. Like, what is the time frame to make this happen before, names have to be on ballots?
Right, I think we're gonna have to find that out next week.
Well, and I think the timing of it actually isn't terrible because people can start taking out their papers now. So if we're going to increase to a board of 7, it now is a time when people can take out their papers. So maybe instead of at that time, one person being elected to fill Jen's seat, it would be 1 to fill Jen's seat for that remaining year and then 2 for whatever the term is.
But there must be a charter.
Yeah.
This has to go
Yeah.
to
City council next.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's not like
And-
a quick
yeah.
process.
And we'll find out from them what the next process is. This pretty much is a discussion to vote to bring this forward to city council and see what's next. Because we don't know.
So should the motion
don't know.
then perhaps be explore the possibility of increasing the size of the?
Or move forward to the next step or whatever.
I frankly didn't know, well,
All right.
I think I heard a voice at the other end of the table.
Yeah, I think this is a big question, and I don't feel prepared to decide on it this evening. I think I've started to do some research on this, and I feel like there's a lot more that I'd like to do for myself, and I think that we could all benefit from doing. I started looking at like how well do certain different size groups function in, like, for boards and other kind of committees, and there's some research out there that says that 5 members is a good number, but when you get to 7 or 9, it starts to produce some difficulties, and I don't know enough about it yet to be able to really describe it. I know enough to say, wait, I want more time to consider this. I also think that nomination papers have just recently become available. The city's got to act on this. If we do, I feel like I'd like more time to be able to discuss it with you guys and in a workshop and get some resources and materials to help us inform our discussion. And then if we decide to take action and send it to the city, they can do it too. But I think it's too late to have something in place for this year.
I don't think it's too late at all. I mean, this actually came up in May or June. I don't know what questions you have, but I've done a lot of research on it, and I'm happy to take you through it. We are one of the smallest boards in the state of Maine. As I said, we have a perfect example in front of us with the city council. Their board of 7, they're not having issues with conflicts. I can compare all the time to the work that I do to my husband, and while he is very busy, I am absolutely busier. And as I said, when you just look at the amount of responsibility alone, I think that it should be equal. I'm really surprised that it wasn't all along. And I think if the rest of the board, because they've got time for us this coming Monday. So I say we go for, we vote, and if we vote to say, bring it to the board, to the city council, basically what we're doing is we're bringing it to city council and we're finding out what's next. I think if there were a lot of questions, we've had a lot of time. I mean, if this needed to be on we knew this was going to be here. If we had a lot of questions, I feel like that should have been on last month's workshop, because as I said, I've had a chance to do abundant research. As I said, what happens is if we don't do it this year, then we get a year where we have 1 seat and then we have 4 seats come up. That becomes a huge imbalance. This is the only year in which it can be a balanced rotation. So yeah, there's a reason why, as I said, there's a reason why it was brought up back then. It has been mentioned and mentioned and mentioned, and now we're at this point. And while I understand if somebody is not comfortable with it, I'm saying I'm perfectly comfortable with the information and the research I've done. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'd like to know if you guys are, if the rest of you are comfortable with, You know, I don't think this has to be talked to death. I think it's a pretty simple, what is your gut feeling? And, you know, if everybody else is ready to move on it, this is the window.
I don't feel comfortable doing this on gut feeling. I think we really need to give it really thorough consideration and thoughtful consideration. And I'd like to have more conversation with the four of you about this before I am prepared to
I know we
vote.
don't have time.
Before I'm prepared to vote either way on it. And we've already, you know, we've had a busy meeting tonight. It's 9:30 now. I just feel like, yeah, I learned shortly before our workshop that this was going to be on the workshop agenda last week. So that was, even though, and we didn't have much of a discussion about it then. So I really feel like it's just too late in the.
But if you have questions, there was a time for that, and those questions didn't get asked, and to put it off later because those questions didn't get asked, I kind of feel like if everybody else that has their questions answered, I kind of feel like that's not fair to the rest of the town or the group to hold it up either. That's not very balanced either, because there's a lot of things that get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back because something else takes priority. This has a bit of a time window. And as I said, whatever questions you have, this is not the end of it. This is just the next step. This doesn't commit us to saying we are definitely becoming a board of 7. This says we're taking it to the city to find out what has to happen from the city. So there is still time to back out of this. And there's still time to have more discussion. This just says, we're gonna bring it to the city, we're gonna see what the city says, we need to find out from the city what is the process if we choose to go that way. So if we wanna put it on a board workshop for next month, we can have more meaningful discussion. But at the same time, I see no reason while this next step of going to the city can't be accomplished between now and then.
So what you're saying, Abby, is you'd like to see the motion just be explore with the city regarding the process.
Right. Because this is
we're not
something,
voting on whether or not we will increase our numbers.
Because I'm not 100% sure. I think this has to go to the city, and I don't know if the city has to put this out to the public for a vote, or if it's just city council that has to vote. But even then, I know that that's not a final thing. It still has to come back for us. Like there's.
Can I ask a question? And
Yeah.
Maybe this fits. So it would seem to me one of the things that would have to change with this group would be amendment of our policy. So is this a policy committee thing, and might it be possible for our policy committee, because I presume the city has the equivalent of a policy committee. And I'm just wondering, is it as simple as making a request to have that conversation? And I don't know the answer to that.
So our policy committee meeting would have to happen after we go to the city.
I guess what I'm saying is, whoever the body is on the city side, whatever committee they have, is that the place to have the conversation and say what needs to be done?
Dale wants us to come to the city on Monday and hear what they have to say.
So, Paul, just a quick question.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. So what would be the harm or the disadvantage, I want to hear from you, if we just do this, let's go ask the city sort of motion today and vote on it, and then our next workshop, you could bring up all your concerns and your research to make us understand why a 9 board membership. Because I don't hear that we're committing to it today.
Okay. Well, now I'm not hearing that either, but I was concerned that we were committing ourselves to recommending to the city that we expand our size to 7, and I don't.
I don't think we're
Because-
recommending that, are we?
Well, I'm hearing that.
Well, we can't, from what I understand the process, we can't. Like, we still have a policy that has to be changed.
Okay.
But we have to talk to them first, because it's a city charter issue first. So it's gotta be them, then it's gotta be
They
us.
could come and say no.
Because I kind of thought at first it was the other way, and then I found out, no.
So is the thought, Abby, the recommendation would be to vote to request,
I would say
Working with-
explore with, sorry, Dan.
No, no, go ahead.
Explore with the city regarding the
Explore.
process to increase the size of the Ellsworth School
Right.
Board.
Because we don't even know what their they haven't told me what that process is. Because I think it's something that I'm hoping that the city lawyer has looked at, but I don't know for sure. It's just a hope that we get that answer.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we explore with the city regarding the process to increase the size of the Ellsworth School Board.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Number 10, discussion and consideration of exit interviews. This was something that I had brought up. We don't currently do them, and I think it's a good, I feel like we're missing out on a good opportunity to
grow.
To grow and receive feedback from folks that are leaving. I think all I was hoping for tonight was to determine who is going to do the research for these exit interviews and take it to the next step. Is it going to be the policy committee or the personnel committee? Because it kind of falls under both umbrellas.
Can the two committees come together?
Nope.
No,
Nope.
because you can't have that many people together. I think perhaps it would be a policy first, or I don't know which direction it would go, because
Chicken
which
or
comes
the
first, the
egg?
chicken or the egg? Because the policy that says we need to do this, and then personnel would put together what we're doing, but I don't know which one
Or if
comes
personnel
first.
wants to come back with a recommendation of, this is what we think would work, and then we write it into policy?
And I think that's probably the best route.
I think it could go either way.
Yeah. It's the
I think
chicken or the
I
egg.
think I like what Abby said.
Because you guys it feels like you guys are doing the work.
Right.
And we just gotta write
Right.
it.
Well, because if we
Well,
write it into a
they're
policy,
gonna direct
that's
me to
not
go
done.
gather the stuff anyway, so that's not a problem.
I'm wondering if you could send out, like, an exit interview, or even just like a paper that they,
Well-
something they, with
Even
at the
I
bottom.
did an exit interview when I left Martin's. It was
Right.
a piece of paper that I answered questions on, but
Right.
still.
I'm gonna suggest that you take the recommended motion and refer this to the personnel committee.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm gonna tell the personnel committee, it'd be a really good idea if on the very bottom it said, would you like to be a substitute at Ellsworth again? Or
Right.
how do you feel about driving a bus?
All right, Abby, make a motion.
Okay, sorry. I forget where we're at here.
I make a motion. You want me to do it?
Okay.
You got it?
Recommend a motion to refer this to the personnel committee.
All right,
Boom.
I'll second that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Outstanding.
We already did 11.
Okay, and
Boom.
so all we have left is discussion and consideration of staff leave requests, which would likely have to be an executive session, Dan, do you think?
I think we could do a real quick one,
Okay.
real quick one.
And she's gonna leave the feed up, just turn the microphones and the video off. And it will say that we'll be right back. It's at the whatever hotel. Yep.
That is archived and is available online, though, correct?
Yeah, we're back.
That thing we were just.
Should be on our YouTube
Me,
channel.
yes.
Okay, so welcome back. So, I will,
Do we need a motion to come out of executive
Nope.
session?
No.
Okay.
You're back in open session.
okay. So I would like to make a motion to permit the employees who submitted a request to the board to roll over up to 15 days of unused vacation time from the 2020-21 school year to be taken yearly increments of up to 5 days in each of the next 3 contract years, beginning with the current one that began on July 1st, 2021. And I'll send that to you.
I've got it.
You got it? Perfect. Perfect.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
And I would also make a motion to approve staff leave request as presented by the superintendent.
Second that motion?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, great. Here, we have made it to calendars and announcements. Our meeting schedule coming up, we've got a special school board meeting the week of August 16th. The date is to be determined. We have a school board workshop Tuesday, August 24th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We have a school board meeting Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And this brings us to item L, adjournment.
Seeing no further business, I would like to make a motion to adjourn this board meeting. We're gonna abort the board meeting. We're getting out of here either way.
I'll second that. Discussion. All those in favor?
I have 9:40.
Somebody asked me tonight, are you guys
Wait,
really gonna go to
wait.
10 o'clock? I'm like, oh, honey, yeah.
It's gonna happen.